Mr. Schron,
Here?
Mr. Tuma,
Yes. Here.
Ms. Stevens. Ms. Stevens is absent at the moment. Ms. Baker? Ms. Simon? Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. We have a quorum.
Okay, before we start with the public comment, as chair, I'd like to say that this is really impressive. For economic development, to have this many people in the room about a topic, this is really pretty cool, yeah. Because ordinarily, as Mr. Carter will tell you, it's usually the two people that are getting a loan or something like that, and maybe their dog or their cat, and that's it. And so we're thrilled to have everybody here on a topic of kicking off of this nature, because it's pretty exciting. So with that, now we'll move over to, I know the agenda says public comment, so is there any public comment for anybody in the room?
Yes, Ms. Lou?
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I will share Mr. Strong's sentiment. It's really excited to see the people full of lots of people coming here to witness and also contribute to our county's development. Later, probably you will all see the impressive documents showing that we have started towards the good direction to put on lots of projects to continue our way to revive the county. However, if you also look at the map, you can see lots of areas still that got missed out. If we want a full economic development, the planning cannot only be restricted to certain areas. It has to be more comprehensive. I know certain things may not come by easily, but we should strive and create our opportunities. Because if we are not, tomorrow I would like to share some other information with all of you at the county council meeting, the public comments. Because if we don't really start now, we will not just too far behind, and our community's opportunity will really be gone soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
Thank you. The minutes of the last meeting of the Magic Day in the United States history, April 15th meeting. So we all know what day that means. Has there ever been approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Has it been moved and seconded? Any discussion regarding the minutes? Hearing none. All in favor of the minutes has been submitted, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing no opposition, the minutes from the April 15th meeting have been approved, and we have one matter that's been referred to the committee, but we also have a discussion area, and a deference to the fact that we have a lot of people here on what I believe to be the sector partnership update. We were going to flip the agenda, and as a courtesy to those folks who are here in the room, you're certainly welcome to stay to hear the 5-year economic business plan afterwards from Mr. Carter, but we'll take that group first. And historically, we do not comment in here on public comment, but this is an area that the sector partnership with the 3 sector partnerships that we're looking at that are pretty exciting, and they are not boundary dependent. The sector partnerships are going to be countywide, and they do not care about where a job is created. The job is a job, and I truly believe, as somebody who runs in the private sector for part of my life, that every job is a good job, and everything that gives value and worth to the individual is a way to make a contribution. I know that the sector partnership with the first launch of the manufacturing sector, the second launch in the medical, and the third with the IT blockchain is going to be an exciting path. So looking forward to hearing about the status of where we are with the first launch of the sector partnership. Mr. Carter, are you kicking this off, or how is this going?
Feels a little strange to be sitting. I'll do it so we
You
can.
can stand up and do karaoke if you'd like to.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good afternoon. Really pleased to be here today. Have an easy part for this part of the agenda to introduce our Workforce Connect team. In 2016, Executive Budish convened an inclusive group of workforce funders, public sector, and philanthropy to discuss how to develop a more aligned and impactful workforce system. This group has consistently met during the past 3 years to achieve this goal, which was a key pillar of the county's government workforce strategy. This strategy's focus was complemented by 2 additional strategies: assisting residents with barriers to employment and creating career pathways in the workforce system. This committee, called Workforce Connect, this committee, your committee, less than a year ago, endorsed and approved $1 million of funding from the Job Creation Fund within the Economic Development vertical within the Department of Development. Executive Budish asked me, this is a significant investment. How do you feel about it? To me, this was no more appropriate use of our job creation dollars, even though it's less transactional than the projects this committee typically considers. The impact and scale that this effort will have over time, to me, really warranted the investment of this $1 million over 3 years. Today, Deborah Vesey, who is the president and CEO of the Deaconess Foundation, who has led this effort over the last 3 years, has really done a spectacular job holding this coalition together, consistently keeping the group focused, is going to present the results of that $1 million that this committee approved last year. So there's no more important effort that our department is doing than supporting this effort. It really complements the foundation of our 5-year plan that we'll talk about later. And so very pleased to ask Ms. Vesey to come up with our partners, Magnet and GCP, to talk about the first sector intermediary that's been established.
Prior to doing that, you mentioned that there's a public sector funding, and I'm a big fan of you repeat and you repeat and you repeat. So who are those people that have written checks to be supporting of this? Because we do have media in the back of the room, and the media is probably watching online, so let's make sure they get proper credit for what they've done. You
will see Ms. Vesey will go through the investors in this effort. In addition to the county, the other public sector funder would be Ohio Means Job, which is our workforce development board.
Okay, so
the rest is philanthropy.
So Deborah's going to cover, make sure we get everybody.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure they get proper credit for the dollars on the table. All right, thank you.
But the county has really been the leader in this.
Right, the county put forth $1 million into this proposal, and there are other funders. I know who they are, but I want to make sure that it's heard by the media out there.
Yep.
Very good.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Okay.
Deborah, are you ready to come on up?
Good. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your time today and for allowing us to come and share with you the progress that's been made with Workforce Connect. So Ted gave you a very brief overview, but I really want to start by thanking the county for its significant investment of $1 million. It was critical to getting this thing launched and off the ground. It represents 60% of the total funding, which I will be giving you more specifics later. But just as a reminder, what the Workforce Funders Group committed to do, and the reason they pulled $2.5 million to be invested over 3 years, is to create and implement 3 sector partnerships and intermediaries in our community, those being in the sectors of manufacturing, healthcare, and IT. The first sector that we started with is manufacturing, and in December of last year, we were able to select both Magnet and Greater Cleveland Partnership, a collaboration to serve in the role of the manufacturing intermediary. Adam Snyder, Debbie Perkle, Ethan Karp, Shauna Marbury, the representatives of the intermediary are going to be speaking to you in specific detail about what they've done and the progress they've made to date, so I will not steal their thunder. So that was decided back in December of 2018, and we immediately got to work on healthcare. Just to let you know where we are today, we made a decision last Friday to advance 2 organizations that are interested in becoming the healthcare intermediary. We have invited them to submit a request for proposal. Between then, December, and now, we took a little bit of a different approach. We realized that in our community, we have 3 or 4 significant healthcare players, and you all know who those are: university hospitals, the Cleveland Clinic, Metro Health, the VA, and others like St. Vincent. And we know that there have been many multiple attempts in the past to coordinate and convene these groups together, some of which have not been as successful as we would have liked. And so we took the opportunity to sit down and meet with each of them in February of this year to really understand the history and to begin to understand if there was any interest on their part in participating in and championing being employer partners and employer champions in the healthcare sector partnership. To our great pleasure, we had a unanimous agreement that something like this was needed, and all of them back in February indicated that they were very interested in becoming involved and learning more. Subsequent to that time, we continued to stay in touch with them and decided to engage them with the Workforce Funders Group in this process of thinking about what type of organization we wanted, the characteristics, the skill sets. And so they have been very engaged and have reviewed LOIs, have given us their opinions about organizations, and will continue to be with us all the step of the way to the selection of the healthcare intermediary, which we hope to happen in August of this year. The ultimate decision makers, of course, are the Cuyahoga County Workforce Funders Group, those that have financially supported it, but the employers are playing an important role. And what we know is that it's critical that they are excited about and willing to support the intermediary. Needless to say, these employers are ready to go. They're ready to take action. They're ready to solve problems. So they're very interested in this. And I just wanted to make sure that you all knew that our employer healthcare community is on board. The people that we've been meeting with are the top talent leaders in those organizations. So as you look at the timeline, you can see that that's our goal for that. And then after we select the healthcare intermediary, we will immediately begin discussions about and thinking about the intermediary for information technology. And again, our goal would be to hopefully have that decision made by the end of the year. So that's a great sort of overview of the timeline, just wanting to give you a sense that work is progressing. I think the pace has been very good. The Cuyahoga County Workforce Funders Group meets monthly. We spend a minimum of 2 hours together. We have learning sessions, and this is a very committed group. So I just wanted to share again with you who the members of this group are, who has been donating a lot of their both human resources, their time, as well as their financial resources. So you can see the list here. We have Natoya Walker-Minor from the City of Cleveland, Stephen Cabanis from the Cleveland Foundation, Grace Cobain and Mickey Tubbs from the Cleveland-Cuyahoga County Workforce Development Board, Ted Carter, Matt Carroll, and David Feinerman from the county, myself from Deaconess Foundation, Bethia Burke and Janine Kaiser from the Fund for Economic Future, who, as you know, are also serving in the role as fiscal sponsor, Shauna Marbury from Greater Cleveland Partnership, Bob Jaquay from the Gunn Foundation, Bill Kaler from Team NEO, and Kara Porter and Nancy Mendez from United Way. So that is the group of individuals and leaders that have been meeting to move this effort forward. Here's the answer to your question, Jack, about who has contributed what. As you can see on this particular schedule, this is a list of the organizations that have funded this effort in the total of $2,502,500. And I'll briefly go through the list. As you can see, Cuyahoga County was the lead funder with $1 million. We had the Workforce Development Board in at $100,000, the Cleveland Foundation at $300,000, Deaconess Foundation at $450,000, the Fund for Economic Future at $100,000, the Gunn Foundation at $250,000, the Greater Cleveland Partnership at $150,000, Team NEO at $2,500, and United Way at $150,000. And as the notes at the bottom indicate, that everyone has committed, these are funds over 3 years. The Fund for Economic Future, because of the fact that it was ending one 3-year cycle and starting another, could only commit for a year, but they are looking to commit additional funds in September of this year. And I also wanted to note that in addition to the $100,000 for the actual implementation of this project, that the Workforce Development Board has also committed up to $600,000 over 3 years that can be put directly toward training if there's a specific project related to and requiring training dollars.
While we have a break, we welcome Ms. Simon to the committee meeting.
And then I wanted to talk a little bit about what kind of commitments have made in regard to expenditures as of this date. And I put the specific detail here for you. And there is a note at the bottom with an explanation of each item. As you can see, the largest commitment is to Magnet and GCP. Magnet is the lead agency in the collaboration to be the manufacturing intermediary. A commitment of $721,250 over 3 years was made, and the money is being dispersed in tranches. And based on a decision that was made on Friday to distribute a second tranche, a total of $240,416 will have been dispersed to them to date. There are certain metrics and milestones that were written into the grant agreement that they are meeting at different points in times before the monies are released. As you can see, we also have 2 consultants that have been helping us with this work. Kirtland Consulting, a woman named Caroline Tage, has been our sort of key facilitator, convener, bringing us together, preparing the materials for the meeting, facilitating the discussions. And then for communications purposes, we have been working with Dixon Eaton. We also, you see Lung Consulting. We recently had Losi Lung, she is a national consultant, come in and facilitated a 3-hour meeting with the group to talk about the future of the Cuyahoga County Workforce Funders Group and what it could or should look like beyond doing this sector partnership work. And then there was a $100 registration fee for Cuyahoga County. So I guess what I would say to you is I'm extremely pleased with the progress that's been made to date. This is really a prime, excellent example of how when the different actors in a complicated system like workforce come together, talking about government, philanthropy, nonprofits, employers, et cetera, when we all come together around a table and choose to do something collaboratively, that truly great things can happen. And so I'm very proud of the group. I'm very proud of the work that's been done. And I'm going to turn it now over to Adam so he can give you some really specific, exciting examples of the work that's been done with the manufacturing.
Yeah, and before we do that, seeing how we're still here, committee members, any questions? And welcome, Mr. Miller, also to the committee. Yes, Ms. Simon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question on the revenue commitment for Workforce Connect, that there's a list of the provider of funds, your Cleveland Cuyahoga Workforce Development Board. Is that all WIA money? What's the source of the money, that $100,000?
My understanding is that comes from their budget, which is WIA money.
Well, some of the budget also includes some Cuyahoga County money for other purpose. I just wanted to be clear that was
I will double
federal
check for
funds.
you, but
Okay.
I believe it's federal funds,
Thank you.
yes.
Thanks.
Other questions? Yes. Mr. Miller? Yes?
Just one question about the healthcare sector intermediary. Am I correct in presuming the intermediary will not be one of the major providers, that you want someone who is independent of them and can work with all of them?
Yes, the intermediary will not be one of the hospital systems. It will be an organization that can act, if you will, as a backbone to support them. In other words, this organization will convene them, bring them together, facilitate conversations about common talent needs that they choose to work on collaboratively. So it's going to be an organization that's going to support them as a collaborative unit, but it will not be one of them, correct?
And would this organization have to be an organization whose primary focus is on healthcare, or it could be just an organization that's good at bringing people together and organizing stuff?
Well, we had 4 interested parties that submitted a letter of interest. We have 2 that we have decided to move forward. I can't share with you who those are because we're still contacting everybody about that. I will tell you that all of the organizations that submitted didn't work directly in healthcare, but had experience and an understanding of healthcare and healthcare talent needs. Some of them were acting and have had more experience acting in an, if you will, facilitating convening role than others. But it is a wide mix of different types of organizations. And so the next process is we've invited an RFP with a lot of specific questions, trying to dig in and better understand, are they suited for this role? Do they understand the role? And again, with the employers being at the table with us, the employers are very clear about what they're looking for and what they want and what they don't want. So having their opinion has been extremely helpful.
Any other committee questions? The chair will ask, you have three areas on your funding distribution: Kirtland, Dixon, Eaton, and Lewin. Will any of those services be used to support the other two sectors also? Or are these communications that are only specific to the manufacturing one? I understand the magnet, and I do understand the registration fee, but the other three, is there an element that we'll be able to build upon as you launch Sector 2 and Sector 3 out of the communications,
Yeah.
facilitation, and strategic planning?
Yes, Kirtland Consulting and Dixon Eaton have been partners with the Cuyahoga County Workforce Funders Group since the beginning, and their scope of work is for all three.
Okay.
And they have been focused on and providing those services for all three. Lung Consulting, she is a national workforce consultant based out of Dallas. We have used her only specifically to facilitate the discussion, separate from the sector partnership work, about the group itself. And this group is together, and having the group think beyond what will we be doing, should we stay together, what role should we continue to play post-sector partnership work. So that was a one-time effort. But Dixon Eaton and Kirtland Consulting, I would say, have really been important partners to the Workforce Funders Group since the inception of this idea and then the actual implementation of the work.
Okay, so I was just doing the math, that if 200,000 of the 918 is roughly going to have to be repeated, the money won't be there, and so I was just hoping that some of that was going to cross over the other two sectors as far as the communications and the facilitation out there. In the following on Mr. Miller's question, without going into specifics of the other two candidates on the medical, have they done any work in the facilitation of trying to bring together probably a rather difficult group to initially to bring together?
I would say that one of them has had significant experience in that. The other has had a brush with experience with that, but is very heavily involved in that sector and understands that sector and has relationships with the employers, but in a different capacity.
Okay. And from the standpoint of what it's going to take to go forward, and we did go through the listing of the funders, is there an expectation that this is not a flash in the pan for 3 years or 2 years or 1 year, that this, we are just like, if I look at the corpus for almost all these organizations, I can only think that the corpus was generated in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s through organizations like medical manufacturing. Now, the IT might not have been there in its current form, but all of these organizations, if you look at their corpus, it probably was derivative, I would like to think, a major portion from manufacturing, and then some medical also. Is there an understanding that this is not just this window of time, that this is a long-term commitment that we as a community need to have an expectation?
Yes, the Workforce Funders Group decided internally, and I will let Adam, Ethan, and Shauna speak to this, but sustainability of this work beyond the 3 years is something that we talk specifically about in the grant agreement, and the Cuyahoga County Workforce Group has made a commitment to work with the intermediaries that are selected to help them over the 3-year period in which we're funding them to begin to think about and identify how can this work be sustained beyond our full funding of 3 years. That is something that we expect probably next year the manufacturing group will have a much better sense of. The Cuyahoga County Funders Group also understands, and there has been discussion about the fact that there are going to be a lot of great efforts coming out of this, which Adam's going to talk about, that are going to require possibly additional funding for these efforts to play out and be tested. And I can tell you that Deaconess Foundation, and my hope is that others around the table are committed to and understand that we will continue to support this work as it evolves. But no, we absolutely feel that in each one, it's going to be a different scenario, thinking differently about how this can be supported. What we do know is that in other sector partnerships across the country, it takes a variety of forms. One of the things that I think will be critical is that the employers, after spending 3 years together, see great value in this sector partnership and hopefully will be compelled and interested in wanting to support it themselves, not only with their time, but possibly with dollars. We know that there are also other types of federal funding and other funding out there. And so we know that we have a responsibility to work with the selected intermediaries to figure that out. And so we will do that along the way. And please feel free to ask that question of the magnet and GCP, because it's something we've already discussed with them, and I know they're thinking about and we're thinking about.
Well, my question goes back to the initial funders who stepped up and participated. I think some of these funds have multiple billions of dollars in their funds, in their account, and it's just even a blink to say the numbers that are on the table for the interest rate based on probably 2 to 3 billion of that is directly related to this sector. And if they were to actually equate how much interest is being earned on that 2.5, 3 billion that goes into the manufacturing sector, and then another 2 billion that goes into the medical sector, it's not even close to what we have. So we hope it's my desire as chairing this committee that they too recognize that this should be a continuing commitment by every one of the funders.
Well, I can speak on behalf of Deaconess. We absolutely see it that way, and I guess I'd turn the tables on you, Jack, and ask if, hopefully it's very important to us that Cuyahoga County, the Workforce Development, and others, again, continue to see value and hopefully would support this beyond the 3 years as well.
I will work on Mr. Carter to make sure that happens from our end, but we'll do the best we can from that standpoint. Thank you very much. Is there a sequence that you have laid out?
Adam's next.
Oh, yeah. Yes, please. Mr. Miller?
Since you mentioned it, I just wondered how many cities you're aware of around the country that have workforce sector partnerships.
I don't have an exact number, but I can tell you it's many. When we did the initial study, before we decided to launch into this, we were presented with examples from Colorado, from Dallas, from Boston, from the West Coast. There are multiple cities out there doing different types. Some are more focused on healthcare, some IT, some manufacturing. I think you're aware Cincinnati has a very robust sector partnership down there, the Partners for a Competitive Workforce. So there are many examples out there. Again, Adam and his team can talk to you about some of the sector partnerships specifically in manufacturing that they've reached out to get information and support about what were the lessons learned. But there are many other examples out there in the community. As far as how those have been funded, it takes a great variety. Some states have states that are much more willing to support this type of work, some local philanthropy, government. I think the best sort of diversification is a combination of all of that, but they evolve differently, and the sustainability takes different forms.
And around the country, how long has this been going on for?
I would say at least a decade, maybe a little longer. I don't think we're that far behind the 8 ball because we know how long it takes for these things to work. Again, this is about really getting the employers engaged and really driving the effort that this is an employer-led practice. And Adam, again, has excellent news for you about the fact that that's already happening in manufacturing.
Well, there's other communities. I'm sorry, were you done, Ms. Miller?
Yes.
There are other communities that use different terminology. Silicon Valley is heavily funded by the educational institutions out there, and they know the ripple effect out there. the folks up at MIT are heavily engaged in the R&D development, and though it doesn't call it sector partnership, it's got a little different spin to it on that, Mr. Miller. And then you go down to Research Triangle in North Carolina, and though they are not calling their sector partnerships, they are clearly doing the same kind of thing around their identified growth opportunities. So with that, I assume Mr. Karp is probably the next one in the well. We're not too tough up here, by the way. Yeah. And if you'd like to have that, if you'd like to do it standing, you can, certainly is easy to do. Afternoon.
There we go. Thanks. So, the number of to push this button. Perfect. Ethan Karp, CEO of Magnet. And I had the distinct pleasure of talking up here and giving a little bit of my background to Dale last week. So Magnet overall, and this is a partnership, of course, leading the intermediary of the sector partnership for manufacturing, which is a great honor. It's a partnership between us and GCP. On behalf of Magnet, what we do all day, every day is go out and see manufacturers. And for 35 years, we've helped them innovate, become more, use the latest technologies, and over the last 15 years, look at the workforce that they're going to need in the future, doing everything from career awareness to working with intermediary organizations and other nonprofits such as Tri-C to help bring the future talent. And I can tell you this sector partnership is the most exciting thing that I've seen, and the potential that it can bring for our entire community is immense. So your question around how many times has this been done elsewhere, I don't have the exact number. I can tell you that we personally have talked to 33 other manufacturing-specific sector partnerships, and everything you're going to see here is born out of those best practices. I'll also tell you that those sector partnerships are rather envious of some of the things that we're going into this, even though they might have a decade of experience on us. They love the collaboration, and they're envious of the collaboration that has already occurred because of you, the county, contributing and all of those funders contributing. So this was started on a very strong platform of collaboration. Particularly as we think of this whole thing about changing the system, changing the way we think about this isn't just another program, something that will lead to thousands of jobs in the future. This is how we initially thought about the process. I'm going to give you a few sort of intro slides to say why we care about this, and then I'm going to turn it over to the lead facilitator, Adam. The major thing to think about here is that there really are a lot of great efforts going on in the workforce system. You guys see them, they've been around, you guys have funded them. The difficulty is that they're often siloed. They're mostly subscale, at least the scale of thousands that we need to fill the gap in manufacturing, which I can tell you is hampering every manufacturer out there to the point where their growth is constrained by this. We know that there's a lack of recognition of the complexities by all parties of what this problem actually entails. And we also know that you have a whole bunch of programs all vying for employers to participate. That's both confusing and taxing. And that means resources are not coordinated necessarily, they're not aligned. What we want are holistic solutions. We want employers driving that process to make sure that it meets their business demand. It also means that they're going to be more likely to contribute all of the various pieces that are required of a holistic system. We want to coordinate and leverage those resources, not necessarily direct them, but have them all going toward what manufacturers in this case want. And this enables us to start thinking out of the box. Some of our non-traditional populations of people, how are we targeting them through these efforts? We're not doing this alone. Yes, there are those dozens, maybe hundreds of other sector partnerships across the country, but even in the state of Ohio, Ohio Manufacturers Association is leading, and we fortunately get to be part of that now that this sector partnership has been formed at you guys being the catalyst for that. They are pulling all the sector partnerships together across the state. This is relevant because Deb mentioned the many potential future opportunities. There is a very large Department of Labor grant announced this morning for apprenticeship that was only secured and successfully secured as of this morning because of the partnership of all of the state's sector partnership. Some of those funds will be flowing directly into these efforts in the future. The benefits of the sector partnership are for everyone. Employers, no one employer, and I can tell you this after working in this for Magnet for a very long time, no one employer can do this by themselves. It needs them coming together. For colleges, there's a lot of recruitment issues we know about. How does that get solved collectively? For our communities, reducing that unemployment, that underemployment, manufacturing has great wages. This is why living wage, family-sustaining wages are a major focus. And of course, for the county and the city, this is more tax-based and perhaps starting to deal with some of the equity issues across the county. Lastly, those 33 other examples give us a framework upon which to work. And this is very much a large tent involving as many parties as possible, where we as the intermediary, this little yellow triangle down there, serve the role as facilitators. And the team that you're looking at here, I'm really on the stage here on behalf of myself and Shauna from Greater Cleveland Partnership, but our team is myself and Shauna, and then from the Magnet side, we have Debbie Perkle and Adam Snyder, both working together to facilitate this. And from the GCP side, Mike Lavin and Chris Nance, all of us consistently meeting so that we bring a wide range of perspectives to this very difficult problem. Where I'm going to leave you off with Adam, who, as of 5 months ago, was actually a manufacturer, was running a manufacturing company, has had a whole career in manufacturing. Where I'll leave you off is talking where all this entire process has started for us, which is the manufacturers, their leadership, and why that's so critical for the success of any future endeavor. I'll be available for questions at the end, but I'd love Adam to be able to take us through what we've actually accomplished since we started in earnest around January, February. Adam?
Afternoon, Adam Snyder. As Ethan mentioned, I joined the Magnet team specific to this program. Was the president of a manufacturing company out in Strongsville, and I've spent most of my career in manufacturing and engineering, mostly operational and production-related roles. I came on board because of this initiative and how exciting I thought it was for the challenge that I faced as a manufacturing leader most often and across all of the verticals. And as the work started, as you heard in a couple of ways, the sector partnership concept is rooted in the employers owning and leading the initiative. So our intent from the beginning was to recruit a manufacturing leadership team of thought leaders, of action leaders, of a broad swath that would represent manufacturing in the Cuyahoga County area. It is hard for anything in manufacturing in Cuyahoga County to be done in a vacuum, so you'll see a little bit of overlap there, but part of the excitement of this is the engagement of a really strong group. So you can see the folks that have volunteered their time and potentially their resources going forward in the first couple months of this. And as you can see, a lot of those names, we range in firm size, all having a manufacturing presence in Cuyahoga County, ranging from 30 employees to 5,000 employees. Some of those names, obviously, you hear regularly with workforce efforts around the county. Lincoln Electric, Swagelock, Juergens, Odie tend to be kind of in the forefront, both on the demand side and on the support side. We've also got some great representation from small and mid-size owners. One of the other keys to this, and part of the envy that Ethan mentioned, besides having a strong base of public-private support, a lot of sector partnerships, particularly in manufacturing around the country, convene based on HR managers or training and recruiting leads coming together on a regular basis. This initiative, from the start, we were very purposeful to grab ownership level or C-suite level responsible for the budgets, the initiatives around workforce development and recruiting and talent development within each of these organizations. The process itself, at the commencement of this in about the beginning of April, we had recruited this great team, and the thought was to take them through a process that made sure we level set, and all of the executives understood a couple of things going into strategy definition. The first couple of things around what is the state of the labor force in Cuyahoga County, what are the barriers that get in the way of people getting into jobs in general or into manufacturing careers more specifically, and then for this group to really settle in on what is the vision and what are the strategies that this group wants to endorse and align the community around in order to close this skills gap. I'll get into a little more detail about some of the steps in this process, but wanted you to see kind of the initial phases of the sector partnership and how we were structuring that path forward. One of the key elements, and as Mr. Schron asked, the funders group is all listed down the right side. One of the key elements that we wanted to leverage is Cuyahoga County's existing assets in the workforce development space. So besides a manufacturing leadership team, we also convened what we were calling an operations leadership team or the workforce and training leadership team. And you'll see organizations like Tri-C, Towards Employment, YOU, Ohio Means Jobs, and Manufacturing Works have a lot of momentum and existing experience and knowledge in this space. They're meeting at about the same frequency that the manufacturers are, and at a couple of points, we're bringing those groups together in order to share the perspectives from two very different worlds in a lot of cases to facilitate further alignment. The specifics as we got into that process and educating and aligning the manufacturing leadership team on what are the populations that we may be able to be more effective at recruiting and training in, and also what are the barriers there. There were a number of great sessions. A quick nod to the manufacturing leadership team. It is not easy to convene a group of 14 C-suite executives and align calendars, particularly when we're asking not a short amount of time. We were together over April and May. That group met for 12 to 15 hours, all in the evening, everybody basically giving up both personal and professional time to go through some of these learnings. And the validation unofficially and vocally from the group was that it was very valuable. There were a lot of things that collectively the group didn't understand as a whole, and it helped shape the strategies that you'll see going forward. There's also a lot of expertise when you start looking at reentry population, veterans, disabled adults, students in the high school system and community college system, and what those barriers are, to be able to pull those operations partners in to speak very specifically on what those barriers are and what's been tried in the past to affect those things. So at the culmination of this process, and I hope that this is exciting and we can convey the excitement, the manufacturers, the output of this initial process was essentially a vision and 3 strategies to align behind. This vision that you'll see was a culmination of a lot of great discussion amongst the manufacturing leaders and some really strong thinking about what is the future of manufacturing in Cuyahoga County, what do we become, what do we need to do, and how does that impact the individuals in the area. So worth saying out loud, the manufacturing sector in Cuyahoga County is a growth engine for the people and economy of Northeast Ohio by being the manufacturing education capital of the United States and investing to unlock an abundance of diverse skilled people to access, thrive in, and love their careers in manufacturing. I think you'll see as we get into the strategies, some of those key concepts and the bolded words there will come through. You'll see how the initial strategies fit towards this lighthouse beacon that we've put out there. And really the exciting part and the meat of what we'll be focused on going forward being in these strategies. The first strategy.
While we're at that point,
Yeah.
do you think those same concepts, because I know that Deborah's going to have this same challenge when she gets to the medical, she's going to have the same challenge with the IT, with the blockchain and the derivative of it. Are those things going to be something we can, because I look at this, my question originally was on those first 3 components of communications and facilitation. Can we use any of what you are doing as a building block for the next group and then the next group? Because it'd be nothing better than to be the capital for every one of those 3 components out there.
As I get questions from the community, from the media, from this committee, I always go back to, are there words that are coming from the manufacturers that answer those questions? Because this initiative needs to be employer-led. And I can tell you that without question, the manufacturing leaders were discussing, you know what, a lot of the things that we are going to do and a lot of the things we're targeting could be replicated in these other sectors. Now, there's some asterisks on there because, for example, that last one, love their careers in manufacturing. There are perception and awareness gaps for manufacturing that are different than those in IT. There are education and training nuances in healthcare that are slightly different than manufacturing. But to some extent, and I think you'll see in the strategies component as well, there's some really strong potential synergies between the sector partnerships. We're eager to have a peer in that intermediary group to both learn from and hopefully increase the scalability on the other sectors as well.
Thank you. Yes.
Bigger? Sure, absolutely.
On the slide before that, for the barriers. So you have identified the barriers to employment. Have you come up with, how you're going to overcome them? I mean, I think we can agree that most of what you put on this list are those topics that we have talked about extensively before. So where are you in trying to overcome the literacy piece, the soft skills piece, even the transportation and mobility, access to training? How are you just now in the phase of identifying, or have you gone into a deeper dive?
The timing of this particular discussion is exciting because the first couple months of this process and the recruitment and the standing up of the initiative itself, not as necessarily, is more theoretically exciting than as we transition into implementation.
Okay.
My guess would be as we share the strategies, the connections will be very linear. Okay, I see how that strategy is impacting some of these barriers. Also to acknowledge these were the top half dozen barriers out of 30 that we potentially were going to talk about, and each of them are deep and wide in a lot of cases in Cuyahoga County, and no one strategy is going to solve literacy issues, for example, and no one initiative is going to change policy around benefits cliff, but I think you'll see the translation of the process and the learnings that the manufacturers went through into strategy.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair? I have a question. When I looked at the partners involved in trying to fulfill your leadership and mission statement, what's not present, or it's any labor group? I don't see any labor represented here when they're a key player in training and workforce.
Could you clarify?
Why not? Why don't I see labor?
Could you clarify what you mean by labor group? Because that
Any of our local labor unions that train the building trades, electrical, plumbing,
I think
AFL-CIO, any of the, I know that they're training workforce teams and they're approaching the lack of skilled workers as well and trying so this is a glaring omission from my perspective, why they wouldn't be included in this team playing.
The involvement of the labor organizations in a number of historical construction initiatives around workforce has been very strong. I would say that we have talked with, besides these leaders, another 40 organizations, some of which cross over some of those organizations, and then also from the standpoint of workforce for manufacturing as a whole. It's a little less cut and dry on the manufacturing side than it is on construction per se, as how the labor organizations are involved with manufacturing. The opportunity now to pull in the appropriate partners as we transition into implementation, I think is a great observation that there may be other partners that have been playing a more passive role in the initial stages that could play a more active role as we transition to action.
But this group is not focused on construction.
It is not.
This is not focused on plumbers and the folks who are involved with the heat, light, and power and the glazing, the window building and all that.
I would say for the sake of public illustration, the most common jobs and roles that would fall within this sector partnership would be probably welding, machining, and industrial maintenance within manufacturing facilities in Cuyahoga County. So it tends to be probably tangential or very separate than a lot of the building trades would play.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. However, when you have a group of individuals who are receptive to different types of training in a particular field, I don't see why funneling some of these prospective trainees into the manufacturing realm would be a bad thing. I just think that there's you've got a pipeline of individuals who want to train, who want a career, and it might not be, they might not necessarily be open to plumbing, but, they're there in a room. This is a place to try to get individuals who are interested in training on a career path, and I think you're kind of just not really tapping into the full ability to get recruits.
Okay.
It's
Thank
a
you for
good
the suggestion.
resource, and I'd like to see some communication to try to cross that barrier, because that's a silo.
There's definitely going to be nuances in implementation as to how manufacturing recruitment efforts and training efforts can work alongside or even complement recruiting efforts in healthcare, in construction, in manufacturing, in IT. When we look at the volume of the populations in Cuyahoga County, and the idea being each of those verticals or each of those sectors find the people that are the right fits for that sector, that there's a vast workforce potential to get folks into each of those verticals.
Any other questions at this point? And what is benefits Cliffs? I know that came up as a question. What does that mean?
In an attempt to distill what we could spend 2 days talking about into a 10-second summary, as an individual's wages progress and increase, they become ineligible for various programs, public support programs. There are nuances in those programs and how people qualify, where you could get a raise from $11 to $13 and your net income as a household goes down because the increase that you get is actually less than the decrease in program income or support for food stamps, housing, childcare. And there's various points in that process that it's actually more painful to take the raise or to take the promotion than it is to stay where you are.
Thank you.
So as we translate vision into action, I'll start with the first of the 3 strategies. There are existing manufacturing training paths in Cuyahoga County, whether that is CTEs, College Credit Plus programs, public and private associate's degrees, certificates. The manufacturers felt strongly that initially the ability to throw their collective resources and weight into filling them. There are programs that are full. There are also a number of programs that tend to sit at 40 to 60% utilized. For example, a class that could be 14 people only having 6 or 7. The ability for the employers to play a role in recruitment, engagement, placement throughout that educational journey to make sure that we're optimizing existing resources will become critical to being a manufacturing education leader and innovating down the line. The second strategy, kind of an exciting one, the manufacturing group at their core, they're an innovative, forward-thinking bunch. So the ability to design or leverage innovative on-ramps to career paths in manufacturing, both because we need to figure out ways to get folks into manufacturing, and also the ability to do that in a way that really helps to change the perception of manufacturers, their support and their contribution to the community, the things that the baggage around manufacturing that exists in the area around historical perceptions that aren't true in a vast majority of manufacturing. The one mode or method or on-ramp that has gotten a lot of momentum among the manufacturers is the idea of a cross-sector partnership. There's a lot of jobs within Cuyahoga County that are well-established, kind of great first job opportunities, $8, $9, $10, $11 an hour, fast food, hospitality, food prep, that don't necessarily, those organizations may not have career paths that would lead to family-sustaining wages. So the ability to create a true symbiotic relationship between those organizations and manufacturing to be able to help people find paths to training, escalated wages, career paths that could be very rewarding for the folks that would find that interesting and exciting. And then the third one, almost opportunistically, when you have dozen and a half manufacturing executives and owners, the ability to be a partner with some of the key advocacy players and policy players in both the area and the state to make sure that we're providing a voice of manufacturing. What are the things that are most critical? Can we be a sounding board for some of those organizations? Can we be a megaphone for certain topics that are critical to the sector? And then that bottom couple lines, the manufacturers, actually these three strategies were selected down from about 80 that were generated through that process. Wow. In both benchmarking the other sector partnerships around the country, our workforce partners suggesting solutions, great things that are going on already in the manufacturing industry, and essentially then condensing and converging down to the three. A couple of key concepts that weren't necessarily their own strategy, but the manufacturers feel strongly should be incorporated into any strategy: diversity and inclusion, work-based learning and career pathway development, frontline leadership development to make sure that we've got a supervisory team across the sector that is going to be phenomenal at retaining these folks that we recruit from the county, and then also the ability to look at technology that may streamline the forward path on this initiative. So as we take those strategies, we are now actively in the process of very detailed project planning for each of those strategies, as well as action team recruitment. So the action teams, looks like there's going to be about 7 action teams across those 3 strategies that will be a collection of community organization leaders, workforce development leaders and members, and manufacturing employees themselves, looking to convert these strategies into people working in manufacturing. The manufacturing leadership team very boldly said over the next 3 years, we want to bring 3,000 people into manufacturing career paths that wouldn't have otherwise, which happens to be very consistent with the region's current gap, and really takes a big bite out of some demographic challenges that the manufacturing industry has, as most do, of really being attractive to young folks, a lot of people heading towards retirement age in the manufacturing sector, and creating some really lasting and impactful systems to drive this long term. That's what we have for you today. Any other questions, either for myself or the intermediary team?
Questions? Yes, feel free.
All right, well, first of all, thank you for the work that you put into this, and the volunteers and the business people that are in the trenches. That's the best place to go. And it looks like you have accomplished that, and I really appreciate it. It looks like you have done a lot of good work. 2 places I guess I would be interested to hear the next time you come before us. And as I referenced earlier, the barriers, I don't know what page that was on. Getting back to that, how, so the learning process is high school graduates, college non-completing, non-career goers, opportunity youth, underemployed, reentry, all those are the really difficult, but we need those people to get into the workforce, and we need them to aspire higher than perhaps where they are now or where they think they can be. So I guess the gap between that and the barriers to lift them to a place where you see them in your 3,000 closing entry into the manufacturing, will we hear more about that in your next presentation as to how you're going to overcome the benefits cliff, which is, I'm not sure if it's even within your, whether you can even impact that. Of course, the awareness and perception of manufacturing, I think you can get past that. But I think there's a few things here. The literacy is huge for those that are not college bound, who are high school graduates. And we have those that aren't high school graduates. We have that group of young people too that we can't forget about. In your next presentation, I guess, in closing, will we hear more about how you're going to overcome at least some of these obstacles?
From both the intermediary team and the manufacturers, there is a thirst for action. So the next presentation, kind of being at this inflection point, we'll be excited to share, here are the things that are being done, here's the impact. I think the next level of excitement and detail is where the answer to that question comes. A specific example, the reentry population, there's thousands of folks coming back into Cuyahoga County every year. And there are organizations like Towards Employment and Urban League that are doing great work to help those folks, kind of support services to get them ready. There's policy issues that need to be addressed at the state level to support manufacturers and employers in tapping into that population. But the detail of the manufacturers saying, you know what, we admit we haven't across the board done a great job at recruiting these populations and aligning the systems to support them. So when you look at what could potential models be where there's an employer or multiple employers involved from the beginning, where TE and Urban League are doing pre-employment work, handing off to a training organization and staying involved, there's a great placement, and then after placement support services, those are places where county money from Skill Up and WIOA money from Ohio Means Jobs could all play into kind of this stackable service model, which is really the magic of sector partnership as we're designing this, is alignment of the employers, the service providers, and the individuals to really take waste out of those handoffs and systems.
I look forward to hearing more. Thank you for your
will
work and all of your work. It's good job.
We're looking forward to sharing. Thank you.
Other questions? This actually is less than 6 months stood up, is that approximately that?
We
I think
are
you got your
just
award?
under 5 months
Yeah,
from the announcement of from kind of the start of the intermediary process.
to this point forward, okay. And I know we have somebody from GCP, is there a desire to put anything on the comments in regards to it or not? Not mandatory, but we always love to hear from GCP because you're the other one that got funded in this process, so.
Thank you to the chair and to the council. Shauna Marbury from Greater Cleveland Partnership. We are co-partnering with Magnet on the intermediary team to drive this process. From our perspective, we very much appreciate working with Magnet with the deep expertise in the manufacturing sector. GCP is coming to the table as we work with employers and members in many different sectors. So we're acting as a thought partner, a strategic partner with Magnet. We are also a part of the Workforce Funders Group team. So as we sit at the table as a funder of this work too, it's exciting to also be a part of the hands-on work. So we thank the council very much for your support.
Thank you. Anything else from anybody else in regards to this? Well, wish you good luck. We'll watch that number of 3,000 go down over the next 3 years, whenever the launch is of the official part of that. And then I can only assume that there's that same gap in medical and the same gap in IT, and they will have their numbers too, and put all those folks to work. It will more than pay for the county's investment when all those people are making contributions and having jobs.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, thank you very much, and good luck when you launch the next, when did you say that you're making the next announcement as far as the? Late August, early September. Okay, great, good luck.
Okay.
Mr. Carter, we have one other item, if we can read that onto the record, that'd be great.
Resolution number 2019-0139, adopting the 2019 Economic Development Plan in accordance with Section 7.05 of the Cuyahoga County Charter and Section 801.01 of the Cuyahoga County Code.
Nobody has to leave. I didn't mean to kick you out. This does correlate with that piece too. Thanks.
Was it something you said, Mr. Chairman?
Well, I gave the opportunity to leave, and so, like any good person, if you have the opportunity to leave, you'll leave in breaks between the first sermon and the second sermon or whatever.
Okay. Well, I think that was a fitting lead-in, Mr. Chairman, to the treatment of this 5-year plan, just because, one, it's a core focus of the plan, two, this workforce strategy reflects so many elements of the 5-year plan. And so really pleased that you had an opportunity to hear the progress that we've made as a group. And I'll touch more on the Workforce Connect in my remarks. So I'm going to truncate some of this, Mr. Chairman, some of my testimony, which you have before you. On behalf of Executive Armin Budish and the Cuyahoga County Economic Development Commission, I'm pleased to present the updated Cuyahoga County Economic Development Plan for 2019. The annual update was developed in consultation with the Economic Development Commission members who are listed on the plan, but for the record, they are the City of Cleveland, Mayor Jackson is represented by Chief Ripka and Director David Ebersol. Harriet Applegate, Executive Secretary, North Shore Federation of Labor, AFL-CIO. William Friedman, President CEO, Cleveland Port Authority. Brian Hall, Executive Director and Commission on Economic Inclusion. Joe Roman, President and CEO, Greater Cleveland Partnership. Mayor Michael Summers, City of Lakewood, representing the Mayors and Managers Association. And Mark Burns, Chairman of Oswald Companies, representing the private sector. And Jack Schron, who is the Vice Chair of the Economic Development Commission. Commission members were interviewed and their comments and suggestions were incorporated in the 2019 update. We thank all the commission members for their contributions to shaping this plan. Key themes raised by commission members in their interviews included aligning with other strategic efforts in the marketplace, block land, the innovation assessment, and the appreciative inquiry efforts. There was a clear consensus by commission members that the elements of this plan be integrated and coordinated with these other efforts, and I think the timing of that will line up well for that to occur. Driving collaboration among regional economic development partners. Again, the Workforce Connect strategy you heard really reflects collaboration and integration among our economic development partners, and is really a sterling example of a public-private partnership. Being more aggressive in business attraction, retention, and engagement. That was a consistent theme among the commission members. Focusing on growing the county's population through immigration, college retention, and expatriate outreach. Branding the Greater Cleveland region. Driving workforce via Workforce Connect, starting with manufacturing. Advancing diversity and inclusion, improving mobility to work via transit and other innovation means, and building on the momentum of the Opportunity Corridor. Lastly, and this is for discussion among this group and the executive, is consider updating the plan every other year or making it a true 5-year plan. So the charter mandates that we report out every year. You can see even the progress made on Workforce Connect. While we made considerable progress, that takes time. And so is it more prudent to do it every other year or more have greater intervals between report outs? The most important element of this plan is that it represents a collaborative framework in advancing economic growth through job creation, job preparation, and job access for the county's economic development ecosystem by our more than 20 partners, both internal and external, with the county leading, coordinating, and facilitating many of these efforts. Again, Workforce Connect is a perfect example of that, where we were a funder of this effort and really served as a catalyst to work through a public-private partnership. We have forwarded our performance assessment matrix so that you can see progress on key activities since 2016. That's this document here, which you should have before you and that we discussed last year. Updates for the 2019 plan are related to sharpening the focus of our primary goal, Cuyahoga County's economic growth. We have refined our strategies in the light of our experience, learnings, and changing circumstances. The 2019 update reflects no major changes in strategy, but rather an incremental approach. Two important changes from a macro perspective since a year ago include the continued decline in unemployment, which is a positive outcome, and decline in our population, which is a challenge we must continue to address. Cuyahoga County's unemployment rate continued to drop over the past year from 4.8% in April 2018 to 4.0% in April 2019. County population also declined from 257,401 in 2017 to 1.2 million in 2018, which is the latest estimate available. Low unemployment tightens the labor market, while declining population continues to stress the public sector with decreased revenue to maintain the same amount of public infrastructure. 4 themes in our 2019 update, and I'll also reference some of our 2018 results. The first theme is workforce innovation, so I'm not going to rehash kind of what we just heard in terms of Workforce Connect. I'd only answer 2 questions that came up during the presentation and really, again, highlight the public-private nature of this effort, the leverage role that the county played and that we worked as an enabler of this effort. The partnership and connectivity with my office in the execution of this effort with HHS, particularly on the residents with barriers. So a lot of that work, Councilwoman, is done through HHS. And so, again, it's not the Department of Development, but our partnership with HHS to address those barriers to employment. But most importantly, which was touched on briefly in passing, is that this is a dual customer focus. So it's private sector led with a principal focus on the private sector, but also is focused on employing residents. So that also touches on the equity and inclusion component of our plan, where communities that have traditionally been disinvested or sidelined in this economy, now because of the tight labor market, have an opportunity to compete for and be positioned for the talent demands that are in the manufacturing, these other 2 sectors that we will be focused on. We will continue to expand county-specific workforce initiatives, including refocus summer internships, a training partnership with Cuyahoga County Community College, and our innovative and successful Skill Up service. Our Skill Up service provided talent development expertise to 292 businesses through May 2019, showing them the bottom line benefit of advancing the skills of their existing workforce through on-the-job training, a missing piece in the puzzle of fitting skills available to skills needed for business growth. Training has been planned for 43 businesses and carried out in 29 businesses, with 123 workers completing training and receiving credentials. Education is a key part of workforce preparation reflected in this plan, and county government has taken a leading role in supporting evidence-based educational interventions. Our Universal Pre-Kindergarten Initiative has shown remarkable and measurable results, with 81% of students who participate in high-quality pre-K programs for at least 6 months, achieving kindergarten readiness. The last 12 months saw the adoption of the Say Yes plan, which will combine financial support for college attendance with focus wrapped around services to support students as they complete their high school education. The second theme is entrepreneurship and business innovation. Our region has extraordinary innovation assets, which must be aligned in order to drive future economic growth. These assets include the NASA Glenn Research Center, established industry sector intermediaries like BioEnterprise and Magnet, early-stage startup supporters like Jumpstart and Plug and Play, and our current work on the Blockland Initiative to make Greater Cleveland a center of blockchain activity, innovation, and employment in the IT sector. Our challenge is to leverage this extraordinary wealth of innovation to keep the resulting businesses and job growth here in our region. We have the advantage of a reasonable cost of living and an emerging entrepreneurial culture and ecosystem. We must better organize the system and connect seed capital to it. We must add to this the assurance of a supply of talent and other needed inputs for growth. Again, going back to the previous discussion. We are engaged with multiple institutions and municipal partners to encourage and sustain the desired growth of innovative startups. One example is the county's modest investment and support for the Aerozone Alliance, a collaboration of 7 communities adjacent to Hopkins Airport, which is also one of the 6 job hubs in the county. Anchored by NASA Glenn, which promotes aerospace-related development around Cleveland Hopkins Airport. Over the last year, Aerozone has received greater attention from the business attraction system as a recognized job hub. We have supported Ohio Aerospace Institute, which leveraged our funding for a larger federal grant to support NASA's technology transfer for the Midwest. In fact, NASA in this instance is the hub for the Midwest for innovation for the federal government, with NASA as the anchor. The Ohio Aerospace Institute project has moved to a demonstration phase, which will consciously encourage early-stage companies to support NASA Glenn and the aerospace industry to locate in this area, to access the workforce and tech collaboration needed to grow and expand in the county. The most significant effort in the last 12 months that the department has been involved in was our support for the Blockland Conference, which the county and our department supported in a big way. Establishment of a blockchain-based innovation hub is anticipated in the next several weeks. establishment would be too strong a word, but an announcement. The 2019 Blackland Conference on December 8th through 10th, 2019 is poised to be larger and better than last year's conference. Cuyahoga County and the Department of Development will again be a supporter. The third theme is opportunity, equity, and inclusion. Executive Budish has emphasized since the beginning of his first term that equity and inclusion must inform the work of all county departments. Cuyahoga County coordinates both funding and planning work with a network of capital partners. Last year, our capital partners loaned $6,163,700 to 67 businesses, with 49% of these businesses being minority-owned and 55% women-owned. Opportunity Zones is a new element of the plan and is a recently added federal financial incentive to spur equity investments in businesses located in underserved communities. In front of you is the prospectus that we partnered with a coalition to develop an investment prospectus for our 64 zones across the county. That's that blue book that says Opportunity CLE. Cuyahoga County is working with partners including the Greater Cleveland Partnership, City of Cleveland, and the Fund for Our Economic Future. This prospectus has been created as well as an online platform to match investors with projects. We recently hosted a group from the White House who is charged with leading the Opportunity Zone initiative for visit to projects, potential projects in Tremont and Glenville. They left with a very favorable impression of Cleveland, the collaborative nature of the way we developed our Opportunity Zone process, as well as our platform, as well as our emphasis on social impact dimension of this program. We are creating a system to measure the social impact and working with the Urban Institute to really make this a best practice nationally. As a part of this effort, we are also in discussions with the executive on a potential new Opportunity Zone capital program within the economic development vertical to complement this program. We're engaged with the Fund for Economic Future in a new initiative to overcome transportation barriers to work. We're working closely with the Regional Transit Authority and the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency to better understand the data on travel times to work, especially for our lower-income transit-dependent workers. I have agreed to serve as a regional mobility leader for the fund. We will provide county funding for the fund's Paradox Prize initiative to develop and support innovative approaches to the mobility to work problem. Focusing on the mobility issue, we will also address structural economic inequality issues. We recognize the challenges faced by returning citizens as they seek to re-engage in the economy after a period of incarceration. This burden falls disproportionately on people of color. Cuyahoga County's Office of Reentry, housed in the Health and Human Services Department, is engaged with our department to explore effective strategies to better support returning citizens in both employment and business formation. Our fourth theme is the importance of place-based development, not only in the urban core, but also in our suburbs. The new Amazon distribution centers are complete at the formerly underused shopping malls in North Randall and Euclid. We will continue to focus resources, including economic development loans, on place-based developments that promise both strategic neighborhood strength and also new job growth. We have convened over 30 of the county's 59 municipalities for quarterly discussions, including technical training on how to calibrate incentives and strategies so growing businesses receive the appropriate level of public support. The county's focus on place-based development includes our municipal and community development supplemental grant programs, which this body initiated, which together provide well over $2 million each year to cities and community development corporations for projects they have developed to meet their own locally determined priorities. In the past year, county economic development funding has supported significant downtown, midterm, and suburban development, including the Lumen and Athlon apartment buildings on Euclid Avenue, the Link 59 office building, and New Dave's grocery store and health tech corridor, redevelopment of a medical office building in Parma Heights, and the conversion of a former Masonic temple on the near west side of Cleveland to an innovative rock climbing gym. Suburban projects supported by our municipal grant programs include infrastructure improvements in 8 suburbs, senior center repairs in Fairview Park, community park facilities in Richmond Heights and Shaker Heights, and a new band shell for community musical events in Mayfield Village. To inform our planning and measure the results of our strategic work, we have continued to build out our Office of Business Intelligence that tracks and measures the performance of our office, monitors job creation, and engages in strategic research and analysis. In partnership with the Center for Economic Development at Cleveland State University, we have developed an updated set of measures gauging process on this 5-year economic development plan. The 5-year plan lays out the work before us, not only for county government, but for our partners in the broader regional economic development ecosystem. We look forward to briefing both our Economic Development Commission and Council on our progress as we move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Everybody, I think all committee members have received a copy of the actual document itself. So the fact that you gave an overview does not prohibit anybody from asking questions about the core document itself. So if you feel the need to go into that for any committee members. Also, we are tentatively scheduled to have a meeting on the 15th to pick up some other topics. There's no requirement to have this voted out today. But I think before the meeting, you had indicated a preference to see if we could move it to the 22nd. So don't feel as though we have to vote this out today as far as the 5-year plan. So with that, as a precursor, any questions in regards to the testimony or in regards to the actual plan document itself? Yes, we'll start with the committee member and then move over to,
All right.
yes?
Well, that was a lot and out of breath there. That was,
And that's why I don't feel as though you have to solve all your questions right here today.
Great,
You've
thanks.
We'll have some time and I do not intend to vote it out today.
a couple places I wanted to go.
Okay.
At the top of your presentation, you mentioned that the concern of the obstacles that we heard about in the earlier presentation, that was going to be charged to the HHS, and then we left it there. HHS right now has a full plate of what they're trying to accomplish. And of course, there's always an overlap of what they would like to accomplish as it works towards jobs. But how are you intending on using our Health and Human Services to work in coordination with this workforce training team to overcome some of the pretty big obstacles that exist that they have identified?
Well, I think there, Councilwoman, Mrs. David, Finance Bureau, I may ask him to come up. I think there are several resources in place to address. I don't remember all the list, but I think you mentioned literacy. So we have, resources in the county library that are available that we promote. Our one-stop shops at Ohio Means Job also provides resources for some of those barriers. My team and I have met with David Merriman just to talk about how we kind of impact residents with barriers, some of those 8 different elements. And so it's really an ongoing recognition that let's utilize the resources we have. So those are just a couple of examples. The Aspire program is a very good resource to address some of those in terms of people who have deficiencies and basic skills.
Yeah.
And so,
It's a huge,
yeah, I get into this discussion with my team a lot. When do you, particularly David Flynn will say, when do we know we've succeeded? And we have a big challenge here, and the county by ourselves can't solve it all. All we can do is do our part and do it to the best of our ability. But I think the leverage you see with the private sector in terms of Workforce Connect, that's how we get the scale and impact. But when there's no way that our small department, even HHS can do all this alone. And so this is why this document it really talks about the ecosystem approach, not just a transactional tactical approach.
from my experience with the community colleges, they've been
There's another one, yeah.
great partner
Yeah.
trying to lift some of those students that have gotten up.
Right. So there's some resources there that we're trying to amp up and have, some of the scholarships and things, as well as some of their, promote their credentialing program more aggressively. And so we meet with Tri-C constantly to try to make sure that people are aware of some of these resources.
If I may. Sure. The other issue I wanted to at least get in before I moved on is the population number, 1.25, and now it's at 1.2. Outside of the concern of the population dropping, we also have an aging population. So have you looked at that 1.2 million and how much of that is an aging population that's nearing retirement and perhaps are not part of the workforce, and how much of that is younger people that we're trying to encourage to come into Cuyahoga County to help with the services that perhaps some of those older people are going to be needing. How have you analyzed those percentages when you're looking at a not only population decrease, but also population aging?
Sure. I've looked at it at a high level, not probably in the detail that you might want me to answer. I know as a general matter, about a third of our population is over 55 or 60. A third is under 18, and everything else. The remainder is between that strata. So we have this kind of barbell. But so as you know, people are working longer. Some instances they have to, some instances they want to. But we need to think about that at a more strategic level. What the implications of a aging workforce in the county means for
Right.
for employers.
Are you comfortable with the percentage of young people, whether they're in need of skills or not, residing in Cuyahoga County that can help fill that gap that we are concerned about? Or do we have enough of a population that are not nearing or at the point of retirement?
I don't know that I'm prepared to answer that at this moment, Councilman. I'll look into that and
I would
circle
think
back
that
with
that
you.
would be an important number to know, what we have to work with, not just the population, but what's in that
Yeah,
population.
I would say, just off the top of my head, something that the manufacturing lead Andrew mentioned is that we know for sure that there's young people that have been disconnected to the workforce, that have not been exposed to manufacturing in this instance,
Right.
don't have the skill set. So one of the hopes of the manufacturing intermediary is to engage those young people, get them skilled up, and be able to compete for the jobs that these companies need. And so that's a multi-year process, but we'll drill down into the segmentation of the age and skill availability.
And when you're talking manufacturing, you're not just talking about welding, you're talking about IT, manufacturing, all
The
that
whole
higher
spectrum.
level, that can,
So as Mr. Strong can tell you, some of this is automated, right? So it's no
Right.
longer, and so you have to have the IT skill, and that's the beauty of two of these three sectors, that they overlap.
right. Thank you, Chair, for now.
Other questions? Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chairman, Director, thank you very much for the presentation and looking at the actual plan document. I have two specific recommendations, and the first one is that ideally, an economic development plan should provide a roadmap, both short and long term, so that you look way down the horizon and you see where you want to go. And when you're looking way down the horizon, it also enables you to say, well, if I'm going to get to this place way down the horizon, the things that I need to do right now in the short term are da-da-da-da-da-da. And so along that line, what I would like to see in the report is first of all where we've been in terms of what progress we've made on the 5 to 10 largest things that we're trying to accomplish over the last year. I know the grid that you passed out gives us a detailed performance report, but in that kind of a document, it's kind of easy to get lost in the weeds, and so I think the document itself should contain a summary of what were the highest priority things we were trying to accomplish and how well did we do on them, And then for the coming year, what are the 5 to 10 most important things that we're trying to accomplish or make progress on? So that's the first one.
Okay.
The second thing is that I was very pleased to see the list of metrics that were included in the report. I would like to see more done with that, and for the report to say exactly how would you measure each one of these things, and where are we at right now? What is the baseline, and where would we want to be a year from now, and where would we want to be 5 years from now? So I think you made a good start on those metrics, and I'd like to see that in more detail. So those are my specifics on the plan. One other general comment I'd like to put out is follows from what the chairman was saying about the benefits cliff. I think the biggest thing that we can do to help with that is if fewer people need public benefits. And I think the way to get there is to deal with the large number of people that we have that are working, but they're not making enough money to raise a family on. And I think that we need to do things both in terms of the career pathway and getting people farther along the pathway so that they're into living wage employment. And I think we also have to deal with the minimum wage issue, at least from an advocacy standpoint. It may not be practical to do it on the local level, but the minimum wage in this country hasn't been raised in 10 years. It's the longest that we've gone without an increase, and for people to work 40 hours a week at minimum wage and not be able to make enough money to eke out even a basic living, it's a serious problem, and it falls into what you talked about. You said about the structural inequalities that are in our economy. I think that's one of the most basic structural inequalities that we have, that people can work very, very hard and not get paid very much for it. So I think we need to be more aware of that and give thought as to whether there's anything we can do about it locally and what we can do about it working with our partners at the state and the federal level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. Mr. Chairman, excuse me, before Councilwoman Simon departs, just she brought up two questions in the workforce that I didn't answer in my, so if I could have an opportunity just to
Okay,
answer.
we'll do both, but I also want to catch the calendar to make sure. Let me catch the calendar first, and then you can come back and we'll try. But Ms. Carter, we had originally talked about doing the 15th to do the loan update program, and now with all the concepts and conversations, I'd like to do an economic, and I'll give you the economic activities request. But you had suggested perhaps the 22nd. Is everybody good to go with the 22nd as opposed to the 15th of July for the loan update program and status? And I intend to add some other things to the list. Sure. Is the 22nd okay? Pardon?
May not work for me.
Okay.
Coming back.
The 15th would have worked for you?
22nd, you said?
We are currently set, we were currently going to schedule a meeting for the 15th.
22nd, the 15th works for me, not
Okay,
the
the
22nd.
22nd does not. Will we have a quorum for the 20, Ms. Simon, will you be here, able to be here? 22nd? Okay, we will have a quorum.
Okay, thank
so,
you, Mr. Chair. Apologies, Councilman Baker, I have to be out of town on county business on the 15th. I didn't realize that when Mr. Strawn and I.
Okay, well, we all know that with summer times, it's tough to catch everybody, so we will schedule for the 22nd. Now, if you can answer Mr. Simon's two questions?
And I'm happy, Councilman Baker, to come and give you a personal brief on the loan update. Good news is we made terrific progress.
No, just
got
keep
you.
us in
I'm not going-
suspense for the 22nd.
Okay.
Sorry.
You asked about the the funding from OMJ into the Workforce Connect program. That is not for any infrastructure expense, but it's dedicated to training. So those dollars that they provided will be for training in these three sectors. You also asked, made a comment rather about labor being connected to this. Our labor rep noted the same concern in her feedback on the plan, and so I've committed to her to connect her in a conversation with the chair about how labor might participate in the manufacturing intermediary. So more to come on that.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, so is our Office of Reentry being involved at all with the discussions with this workforce plan? I mean, I heard about, other organizations, but we have an Office of Reentry
I
here.
can't say for sure, so I'll double check whether they've had a one-off conversation I'm not aware of. They are in conversations with Mr. Feinerman and Mr. Merriman and myself, but I don't know specific to the manufacturing intermediary.
Can you,
I'll check on that.
Yeah, I can only assume
Thank
that
you.
based on the fact that it made it on the hot, as one of the items, they will be engaged with it.
okay, good.
Okay, all right, now, my questions. For the 22nd, in addition to the loan update, I would like to have current pending activity for all economic quotes, programs, things of that nature, and to be brought forward as we go forward. You specifically had mentioned this book, The Opportunity CLE Zone, so tell me what jobs we have associated, because this is a massive geographic territory. I want to know what targets, what jobs, where we're focusing on. And I can only assume they're going to fall into the three sectors that we're at least focusing on, of IT, blockchain, of the medical, and the manufacturing, because you've got the geography laid out. You also mentioned the Aerozone. I'd like to know how many jobs we're tracing to the Aerozone. If these are specific topics that you brought up and pointed out in your briefing. So I want to know, how do these topics relate to real jobs? Because ultimately, if you look at the county charter, three of the top items within the preamble all say jobs. And the third one was the blockchain. I want to know, again, reference specifically in here and referenced in here. So tell me how many jobs. And then the last one is, you specifically mentioned that you sat down talking about incentives for, on a quarterly basis with 30 of the 59 communities. So that's 2/3 of all of our communities. You already sat down, had discussions about incentives, and to encourage businesses to come into those 30 communities. Tell me what the net impact has been on the 22nd in that. So if we got those clearly
four,
identified, and I'll go through them
Loan
again.
update,
The Opportunity Zone,
opportunity zones, current pending activity in terms of our economic development programs, opportunity zone.
in the Opportunity Zone, tell me specifically what we're doing. Somebody's gone to the trouble to produce a fabulous looking piece of literature.
Right, so I
Who are we
would,
going after?
Okay.
What jobs do we have?
we'll walk you through this.
Not the jobs that are already here. I'm talking
No,
about the new.
understood.
Yeah.
New activity. So this is in the early stages. There's a program that just got stood up, as you know, in January by the federal government. And so the first stage of that is create a perspective to encourage investment. But
Right.
what we'll give you an update and walk you through what the job
What are we
projections
doing?
are.
What's pending? Have we done any quotes? I see there's members of your team out here.
Blockchain.
Arizona was specifically mentioned as a target area for jobs and job creation. Tell me where we're going after, who we're going after, what pitches we've made, and if there's proprietary information, I don't expect you to share that we're in the middle of a pitch and they're considering Cleveland or Poughkeepsie. I don't expect you have to share that, but you know who you're talking to, and you know whether or not these are pretending jobs. blockchain was another one that you mentioned, and then the 30 of the 59 communities. I want to know what's been done on the economic pending activity. I see we have some good friends from Cranes in the back there. I'm sure they would be thrilled to hear all those comments out there. And then Mr. Miller's 2 points that he would like to have. Mr. Miller, at the risk of brevity, could we stay with 5 of the 10 as opposed to, you said 5 to 10 of your large items that you'd like to see him discuss? Could we just stay with 3 to 5? Because I think that brevity is better than going all the way out there. Could you accept that?
Sure, 5 is okay.
Okay, it's 5, and that's the.
I was trying to get you to 3, but-
Priorities for next year and how we're measuring them, okay?
Because I really believe an organization has a difficult time
The
focusing
pro-
on 10
the-
anyway.
The problem with 3 is then they're not going to be specific. They're going to be broad and global and
Oh, no,
generic and
you asked for
not say
specific,
anything here.
you asked for specific large items that something is being done on.
Right.
We will make sure that that's being done. So you can just put that part of the agenda as Mr. Miller, and make sure you hit that. And the second one was the metrics and the baseline.
That's enough to say grace over for sure.
Yeah, that'll take care of another hour's worth of that. Let's go back to your original opening conversation about wanting to do this on a semi-annual basis. This body does not have the authority to change the charter. I don't believe the charter calls for an annual update, but that doesn't say the charter is not specific as to how big the volume of that book needs to be. And as you and I have talked about in the past, I think the economic plan, because I know that most major corporations have dropped 5-year plans. Whoever wrote that up was probably not a business person that was focusing on where the trend is going, because the world is changing too fast. I think you can do a 5-year plan on 2 pages, and the rest of it is appendix. So that's all you need to present, I believe, to this body every 2 years. Give us your 3 to 5 major items every single time, and then we'll hold you accountable to that. But I think that would be clearly within the 4 corners of what the charter calls for. It just calls for an annual. There's nothing wrong with an executive summary and 2-pager.
Just one
If
question.
you want to read a good book called Traction, it'll focus
Okay.
you on focusing on a tight.
We revisit this topic every year. I just want to make sure we have some clarity from the committee to me and the team, is that this plan, there are elements of it that are specific to my office. There are elements that are within the ecosystem. So, Mr. Miller, the 3 to 5 things, is it specific for what the executive and I see for the ecosystem, or specific to the Department of Development? How do you want me to?
That's a great question.
I think Department of Development.
Yeah, you can't control, you can only control what you can control.
Okay.
I mean, if the federal government changes the program on opportunity zones tomorrow, you clearly can't control that.
Yeah, okay, that's right.
Sure.
One thing you didn't mention, and we're going to be asked, I know in the Board of Control we were asked, and now it was put into the Education, Environment, Sustainability Committee, and that is on the microgrid. We're asked to allow, I think, up to $250,000 plus to get that started. So that really is something that's in front of us. It's not something that is in the future. And from there, there's going to be a lot of conversation and partners that are involved. And I see that you have it on your strategy 1.3. So can you tell us, where you're at with that, where you think we are in the timeline, why you think it's important that we have a microgrid, and are there any companies that are with us today that may move because we don't have one, or may come because we do?
And could we maybe, rather than having you to do that off the cuff, let's put that as an
that on the
item.
agenda.
I'm not going to be here.
Oh, you're not gonna be here.
And we're going to be talking about it.
Even better yet, he's gonna have to put it in writing for you.
Well, that's true, but I will listen to the podcast.
I will, I have a perspective on it, but Mr. Foley is, as the Sustainability Director, is really running point on that. Just parenthetically, we believe, and we've gotten feedback from companies, that having redundant energy that is not susceptible to blackouts and other things could be something that's very attractive, particularly data centers and other companies that require power, as you know. So this could be a differentiator. It was very well received as part of the Amazon proposal. It was one of the key components of it. We are on Thursday holding a meeting with developers to present the executive's climate action plan, as well as the transit-oriented incentive that was mentioned in the state of the county. The microgrid brief will be a part of that to kind of get private sector perspective on the value, the mechanics of it, et cetera. So that will be this Thursday that we'll hold here in the county building. So when would you like?
Well,
I'll get with Mr. Foley.
right. Well, he's going to give a presentation, I believe, in the Education Committee this Thursday.
Thursday, okay.
Or Wednesday, I'm not, maybe it's, when do they meet? Wednesday, let me see, wait a minute. But when they do meet, it would be nice perhaps if you partnered with him to see, because it sounds like it's a big picture down the road, but we're asked to now start supporting it. And so I think that we should have a pretty good idea that if it's a business attraction, it belongs in your wheelhouse. And we should know what that's about and whether you support it, and if you support it today, or you support it as a conceptual idea that needs more conversation.
Okay.
I'm just kind of,
Okay. So what do you need from me specifically before Wednesday?
Wednesday at 3:00 is his meeting. I need to know from you, I guess, where your level of support is, what you think we can actually, I mean, we're talking, I believe, from what I've been reading, hundreds of millions of dollars that would be invested in this. And this would be hopefully from those that are needing of this electricity. And is that a viable opportunity that exists out there for Cuyahoga County? There's a lot of big questions, I think, that are attached to this. And before we start investing even $200,000 or $300,000, even though it sounds like we may be getting some of that back, once we put our foot in the water, it's kind of hard to take it back out. Where are you in that whole picture, and what is your partnership with Director Foley in together moving forward on the success of this? That's what I would like to hear.
Okay.
Well, I think to follow on Ms. Baker's comments, there's two questions there, at least as I understood them. One is the technology readily available to make sure that the microgrid is a system that works and dependable? The second question is, why are we even doing it in the first place? Is it for economic development, is it for jobs, or is it to support businesses so they don't leave? Because that's got to be in your camp, and if we're going to spend X amount of dollars, even after we prove that the technology works, what's the quid pro quo for the county to get benefit? I can tell you that one of our biggest data centers is right down the street here, and they don't need the microgrid, they don't care about the microgrid, and they're probably the biggest single one in the entire microgrid right now. So I'm surprised that nobody's even talked to them, because when I brought this up to the president of the company, he was shocked we were even spending money on it. So I hope that someplace we've got the economic engine, the driver that said, if we spend X amount of millions of dollars, we are going to receive X amount of continuous business support, or there will be a continuation. Because most of the folks who are already in the microgrid territory, in that geographic 5 square mile radius, or as I understand it, already have the money invested in their own backup systems. The individual literally right down less than a block away from here has got millions of dollars invested in his turbines and his backup systems, so that the fact that our microgrid might be able to keep him up and running for 3 years, but that's not a requirement of anybody within those sectors. Can you keep up and running for a week and a half, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that? And they're more than capable of doing that. So I hope somebody's done the homework before they spend taxpayer money, because I have the impression that some of this is more because it maybe is something that feels good. You should be the one to answer the question, does it mean good for the economic driver of the engine? And that you should be asking the questions. Show me where it's providing us benefit. Show me the jobs. Show me the customers. Show me the people who are asking for this. And if they're there, great. And show me that they're either going to come into the county because they're not here, or they're going to leave the county because we didn't provide it to them. Thanks. Does that answer? Was that blunt enough?
It's blunt enough, and unfortunately, it's moving at a pretty fast pace right now, and we're going to be asked to support at least the beginning part of getting into it with the $200,000 or $300,000 investment.
Fast pace doesn't necessarily mean it's the right pace. So.
Well, I'm just saying, though, that we need some answers, maybe quicker than you're comfortable in giving, but I think we need to take the deeper dive in.
Those are the same kind of questions we should have been asking on the ERP system, the exact same questions. So before we go down this path, this is in your camp. This is right directly in your wheelhouse as economic development. If we're going to spend millions of dollars of taxpayer money to support a system to help bring jobs or keep jobs here, you should have a number that says, I anticipate here are the jobs and they're going to be worth $50,000, $100,000 per job or X amount out there.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
I just want to say that I approve of the line of questioning of Ms. Baker and Chairman, that it's a very large investment and it's good before we're in for a penny that we ask ourselves, why are we doing this? What's the expected benefit? What is the purpose? What are we trying to accomplish? And what's the business case? And you know, the benefits can be directly measurable and totally tangible, or maybe it can be something a little less than that, but we still should know what they are and know that we're going to get something out of it that's worth what, as I understand it, it's a large investment. And I think it's good to be asking these questions now before we feel like we're committed because we already have money invested. And so I agree.
Well, those of you who've known me on the ERP system know I've been asking this question of the same nature. Never got an answer, and we went down that path without having these questions answered. And I have no problem with research. If that's $100,000, $200,000, that might be what you need in order to be able to get to that point. But before I'm going to vote for anything that goes to the big expenditure, I'm not going to let it happen again. I'm not going to let it go down the ERP path though we went down that rat hole. So, any other questions or comments? Thanks. We gave you enough for that 20 seconds. It'll give you an extra week, even though you're going to be on vacation. I'd make sure you delegate your work to the rest of the team. Okay. Thank you. And this has been a phenomenal day in regards to getting update as far as the way you've been carrying your leadership on the sector partnership. Congratulations. The second half of the questions as far as the 5-year business plan, I really think that we can be brevity can win the day. I don't think it has to. You don't have, just because it started as War and Peace doesn't mean it has to stay that way. I think you can get it as a thin document, and I would highly encourage you to read the book Traction. It talks about 1- and 2-page 5-year business plans. Thanks. Appreciate it. And have a great vacation. Meeting adjourned.